I have a love-hate relationship with Unsolved Mysteries. It's a love relationship in the sense that I'm obsessed with them and cannot get enough of them. It's a hate relationship because I get so frustrated when they can't be solved, because obviously 9 times out of 10, at least one person knows the answer to the mystery and can solve it with one sentence. But unfortunately that's not always the case, or people don't come forward. However, when I saw Unsolved Mysteries Volume 1 on Netflix, I knew I was in for a treat, and I was not wrong. The day I'm recording this is actually the day before Volume 2 comes out, so I'm very excited about that, and I will definitely talk about that probably within the next week. I'm very much looking forward to that. However, today I'm talking about Volume 1, and there are 6 episodes. There will be spoilers in this video in a moment, because I do want to go into a little bit of depth. But I will just give you kind of a brief introduction to what this is, just in case you're not familiar with it. So it has 6 different episodes, each one looks at a completely different unsolved mystery. For the most part, these are criminal mysteries, murder, missing persons, things like that. But there is one UFO-based mystery, which I have a lot of thoughts about. So I'd be very interested to know what you think of that as well, and I will talk about that in detail in a moment. Please try and keep the comments kind of spoiler-free, but as I said, this is a mostly spoiler video, so I'm happy to discuss these in as much detail as we can. Okay, so there will be spoilers from now on, and I'm just going to go and kind of give a brief overview of each of the 6 episodes and any thoughts that I particularly had about the episodes. To give a review of the actual documentary, first of all, I thought every episode was well presented. They had a really good amount of kind of recons, audio clips were available, interviews with people involved with each case. It was very well presented. The editing was very good. At no point did I think the documentaries felt forced or underdeveloped or like they weren't representing all of the information. One thing I will say, which kind of works in the documentary's favour for keeping me watching, but they had a habit of withholding information until later into the episode. For example, spoilers from now. Mystery on the Rooftop is the first episode, and in this episode, Ray Rivera disappears, and in the episode there's a hole found in a hotel and his body is found in there. And my first thought was, well, check the CCTV, but they don't mention the CCTV until maybe halfway through the episode. So there are a lot of things they kind of don't say they've done until they get further in. So it's like they have done the things you're telling them to do, but they don't necessarily reveal it. So what do I think about Mystery on the Rooftop? A really good episode. The first one, great starter. If it wasn't for the fact that was that weird note hidden in such an obscure place, and the fact that he ran out of the house in flip-flops, I would have said suicide. Why that location? I don't know. But it's hard to believe that he and at least one other person could have gone up there and he could have been pushed off without anybody noticing. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to ascertain what happened, obviously. Personally, I cannot make up my mind, and I'd love to know what theories you may or may not have. Then we have 13 Minutes, which wasn't quite as exciting, but I think it was a lot more emotional. In this one, a woman who owns a beauty salon she goes missing. Within 13 minutes, she has one client, and then nobody sees her, and then when her next client arrives, she's not there. And to this day, they don't know who murdered her once her body was found. And a lot of people are saying that it was the husband, who was the stepfather of her son. To be honest, I never felt that, but there are things that kind of make him look suspicious. Really enjoyed this episode. As I said, because we have interviews with the son, it's quite emotional. But what do I think of it? I don't know what to make of that case, and I'd be very, very interested to hear what you have to say. Number 3, I really liked this. Well, to be honest, I liked most of them. I liked all of them, really. This is House of Terror, where basically this aristocratic gentleman suddenly leaves house, and he sends letters to his neighbours saying that he and his family are now working for the government, and they had to leave and they can't tell anybody their whereabouts. And of course, later on we find out that he's murdered his entire family, including the dog, and hidden them under the house. And his whereabouts were never truly ascertained. This one to me really isn't an unsolved mystery as such. Kind of why he did it is mysterious. I don't for a second think that the deaths, the murder, I don't think any of that was a mystery. But perhaps, wanting to pin him down and saying, "What did you do?" would be very beneficial to everybody. Number 4 is No Ride Home. And in this one, Alonzo, I think he was a teenager, I can't remember exactly how old he was, maybe 18-ish, give or take. He goes to a party in a... He is black, and he goes to a party in a predominantly white neighborhood. That's kind of crucial to a lot of the things mentioned in this. And a month later, his body is found. He is dead, but it's not clear whether or not he was murdered, and if so, why was he murdered? Everything kind of suggests it was a race crime. But as the unsolved mystery goes, there's no confidence in that. And yeah, this obviously is going to start a lot of conversations and could be read by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. I think that what they're suggesting seems very likely. But the frustration of not having answers or knowing it for a fact is obviously, well, for me, frustrating as a viewer. I can't imagine what it feels like for the family. Number 5, we'll leave until the end, because that's the one that I think is the most stressful. So number 6, the last one in the series, is Missing Witness. And as with the previous one I mentioned, I don't really think that this is an unsolved mystery. It may be a cold case, it may not be fully solved officially, but I think it's pretty obvious what happened. And this one, a mother murders, or it's suggested her mother murdered her husband Gary, who is the stepfather to her 5 children. And the oldest girl, Lena, witnesses some of it and is kind of involved in disposing of the body. I think she was 13 at the time. And then eventually Lena, grows up, has her own son, and there's a suggestion that she may be able to kind of rat out her mother, and then Lena goes missing. That aspect is unsolved. Lena's disappearance is completely unsolved. But the murder of Gary, I thoroughly believe, was the mother so she could move in with her new boyfriend, Chris. And I just think it's so frustrating that when Lena had given an original statement years earlier, she retracted it. And that really frustrates me. And I just, for me, this is like, they could have solved this a long time ago, and it's just very annoying that they didn't. It's a very interesting episode to watch and a really good one to end the series on. However, I've just noticed the next one, or the previous one, is Berkshire UFO. And this actually has the lowest rating out of all of the episodes. The highest rating is House of Terror with 8.1. Berkshire's UFO has 5.9. This is not something I'd heard of, but it's actually a massive event. And basically, in Berkshire County in Massachusetts, on the 1st of September 1969, residents who had nothing to do with each other from all over the county witnessed this big UFO, this blinding light from what they assume is a UFO. And one of the interviewees in particular, Tom Warner, goes into a lot of detail about how he kind of had this telepathic message to go home, and then he started to run but was running on the spot, and then he was abducted by these aliens, I guess. And another woman who never met him also has this memory of being abducted. And they were in a car, and then suddenly they were 3 hours later, and people in the car had swapped positions, and nobody had any memory of this. And now, I don't want to say I believe in UFOs, but at the same time, the universe is exceptionally old, and it would be very narcissistic to think that we are the only life form out there. So I kind of want to believe that it happened, and I'm happy to believe that it happened. But out of all of them in this episode, this is the one where we will never get concrete proof, and I wish we had concrete proof. But I know a lot of people will not believe this episode, and that's fine. You know, you're perfectly entitled to your own opinions about UFOs. But it just, like, how else can you explain that so many people not only witness this light, but remember being abducted and having periods of time in their memory where they can't remember how they got somewhere? If you have a theory, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to know kind of what you think of it, because as I said, I'm very, you know, willing to consider that it's a UFO, but I'm also very aware that it could be a reasonable explanation, though what that is, I don't know. So out of all those episodes, that one, to begin with, I thought, this is so out of place. This doesn't fit in this show. But actually, it was so gripping and I loved it. I think Mystery on the Rooftop was a great way to start it. House of Terror and 13 Minutes were a little bit... They were great, but they weren't as good. No Ride Home was very thought-provoking. Missing Witness was a fantastic way to end it. And Berkshire's UFO was just mind-boggling. And I wonder if anybody's written a book about it. I'd love to read that. I'm going to investigate that. Let me know what you think of Unsolved Mysteries Volume 1. It is on Netflix. Tomorrow, the 19th of October, Volume 2 is out, and I cannot wait. I would love to know what you think of these, if you have a favourite, and most importantly, what your theories are.